Well, as we've been saying yesterday, President Cyril Ramaphosa announced an energy action plan to tackle South Africa's power crisis. Energy expert and director for the Center for Renewable Studies at the Stellenbosch University, Professor Sampson Mamphweli, joins us now via Zoom to unpack this question. A very good day to you, Professor, and thank you so much for making the time.
Good morning to you and the viewers.
The strategy very much weighing on renewables, which is something you study. Is this a good strategy?
It's one of the best strategies ever since the beginning of the problem. What I like about it is that the president started by indicating the problems that we're facing at Eskom with the generation capacity and so many other problems that have never been brought to the public domain. So they have done a proper diagnosis of the problem. This has never been done before. This is a problem that has been going on for more than 13 years. And in that 13 years, a proper diagnosis has never been done. And there's never been an integrated, interdepartmental plan to address this particular challenge. Now, what the president has done, he has come up with an integrated plan. We had the integrated resource plan, basically that was our energy plan, but it was not informed by so many of these issues that the president has now alluded to. And what I like about this particular plan is the fact that it looks also at short-term solutions. It looks at mid-term solutions. It looks at long-term solutions. I'm one of the people who have been saying that the integrated resource plan as it stands is outdated. And the president came out last night and said the integrated resource plan is going to be revised. It's actually under revision. The plan as it stands to buy additional power from basically renewable energy, it's a good plan. However, I must caution that there's still a long way to go because there's still studies that still need to be done. For instance, the president talking about battery storage, we need to run models to look at what will be the impact of this big battery storage on our network. And that work is underway now, and I'm leading some of the work that's being done on that.
You're talking about running models, and I want to ask you later on about the regulatory frameworks, if those are in a good position. But on what do you base the assertion that a proper diagnosis has been done?
So I've listened to the president's speech in its entirety, and later went through it in detail. There are problems, such as problems at power station levels that have got to do with corruption, where some parts were taken away and Eskom had to buy, sabotage issues that came in, the police being brought into the picture as well, and some arrests being made. Those are some of the problems that we were not privy to a greater extent. Every now and then, Eskom would talk about sabotage, but they would talk about it at a much higher level without going deep into the actual problem. And the president of the country or government has never been seized with some of the things that were happening at power station level, for instance. They were seized more with, we need more generation capacity, let us implement the integrated resource plan to bring in more generation capacity. Problems that have got to do with procurement, for instance. When power stations break down, when components break down at power stations, it takes a very long time for Eskom to be able to procure the parts. And that on its own delays the maintenance of these power stations.
Yeah.
So those are some of the issues that are happening at power station level that were never properly diagnosed, which they've done now.
So on one hand, the president speaks about stemming the problems, the current crisis that we're having, and on the other hand, he speaks about increasing South Africa's capacity to generate electricity. How does this speak into the conversation that came out of the COP meetings last year of just a just energy transition for South Africa?
So ESCOM has got a just energy transition strategy. There's a number of other strategies being developed or that have been published elsewhere. So when I look at the just energy transition, yes, we need a just energy transition, but we also need new generation capacity urgently, so that the economy does not suffer the big losses that the economy is suffering. I always look at these things from the point of view of industrial revolutions. If you look at the first industrial revolution all the way to the fourth industrial revolution, if we did not follow what was happening in the second industrial revolution and the third and the fourth industrial revolution, we would still be very way back in terms of the way we do things. And now we have got a new revolution in the energy space. Renewable energy technologies have become cheaper. We need to introduce these technologies as fast as we can, but again, at a pace that does not necessarily compromise the current economy that is around the fossil fuels, like at power station levels, for instance, and at in some of these cities and small towns that are dependent on that particular economy.
Prof,
there is money.
I want to ask you
Yes.
quickly, should independent power producers be excited about the president's announcement yesterday saying he wants to massively increase private investment in generation capacity and enable business and households to invest in rooftop solar? And is the legislative framework ready for this?
Yes, the IPPs should be ready, should be happy. Households should be happy. Business should be happy. Legislation is not yet ready. We have, for instance, in various municipalities that have got regulations for small-scale embedded generation. There needs to be a national regulation around small-scale embedded generation that the president talked about, rooftop solar PV feeding back into the grid. For instance, we need to specify the type of inverters that are used at these households and these business establishments, because you don't want a situation where anybody's just using any technology and some of these inverters will feed electricity into the grid when the grid is down, and for maintenance, for instance, and then it will create all sorts of problems. So the regulations need to be fast-tracked by NERSA in terms of that. The regulations on the environmental part of things, the president also touched on that, and the Minister of Environmental Affairs had a briefing which I attended, where she was presenting the proposed changes to the regulations on the environmental side of things. There's quite a lot of concerns that came out of that briefing. I don't think, I think that there's a need for rethinking around the environmental regulation part, because I see that kind of regulation going to courts and things like that, thereby delaying the good cause that government wants to push.
Prof, I want to ask you, how implementable are these plans, and is market ready to supply? So
the market is very much ready. If you look at the buying additional power from IPPs, the current IPPs actually, they have additional power that they cannot feed into the grid because their contracts don't allow them to feed into the grid. The megawatts that have not been contracted, so they currently curtailing some of the additional capacity. So their contracts need to be urgently reviewed, so that those who've got additional capacity can then feed additional capacity into the grid. And in terms of the availability of additional capacity elsewhere within the mines and other establishments, so shopping malls and all that, that additional capacity is there. It's not that much significant, but it's enough for us to be able to avoid some of the load shedding going forward. The only thing is that when it comes to some of the various aspects, there is need for additional work to be done. Like I was talking about the models that need to be run to look at the impact of some of these initiatives on the network. For instance, if you talk of small-scale generation, each of the various areas, they've got transformers that have got particular capacity. So you can't go over that particular capacity in your area. If everybody installs solar PV in that particular area and start feeding, that particular transformer may blow up, basically, to use the layman's term. So there is a need for us to do proper studies to ensure that whatever happens does not compromise the integrity of the grid in the end.
I suppose the question on the viewer's mind at this time is, will this inevitably solve the power generation, the electricity outages on the ground? Professor Sampson Mamphweli, thank you so much for speaking to us this morning. Professor Sampson Mamphweli is the Director for Center for the Renewable Studies at